This episode has very sensitive topics and is for mature audiences only. It contains depictions of various forms of trauma. Viewer discretion is advised.
I didn't know what to do, but so I just stayed and I put up with it. And I even the time when I found out he was cheating on me, and I went to leave, he pulled the ignition out of my car, so I couldn't drive away. And so, yeah, it was pretty intense for sort of quite a young person to deal with.
Welcome to Awaken to Freedom. I'm your host, Jada. This podcast is all about finding your freedom after leaving abusive environments, whether that's a cult, a toxic relationship, or a high control religion. Each week we interview brave women who have escaped these controlling situations, discovered their voice, and gone on to lead incredible lives. Their stories are inspiring and offer encouragement to anyone listening that there is a way out and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. If you're a woman who would like to share her story and be a guest on this podcast, please visit awakentofreedom.ca. Join us every week for a new story of courage and hope. New episodes will be uploaded every Thursday. If you'd like to see our faces, please head over to the YouTube channel and don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to engage with the comments because that helps the algorithm and allows more people to view our content. So with that, let's get started. Today, my special guest is Bridget Pagna, who's joining us from Manchester, England. Bridget is a working mom with 2 kids with a passion for helping the sisterhood grow. Today, she's challenging herself to tell her story, however uncomfortable, so that she can help other women see there is happiness and hope after surviving domestic abuse. Welcome, Bridget, to our Awaken to Freedom podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, all the way from Manchester, England. So tell us about your story of your toxic relationship that you had to endure.
Okay, so my story spans over 10 years. So it started, my first toxic relationship began when I was about 17, 18. I think to kind of preface this, to say that I grew up in a great family. My family gave me everything. We had everything we needed, except for my parents weren't, and you could probably say aren't still the best at emotional conversation. So I was, supported in every other way that I needed to be. But in terms of talking about feelings, that wasn't a thing that we did so much. And so I found that as a teenage girl very hard. I kind of was a troubled teen in the sense that I wasn't causing trouble, but I was mentally troubled. And I was, for a period, sort of self-harming. And then I was about 15 years old and I got caught smoking by my parents, which is the silliest thing. But because my parents, I didn't want to disappoint them. That was my thing, and I felt like my world was over because I disappointed them in such a way that they'd always said, never do smoking. And, and so I tried to commit suicide when I was 15. And, I think that when I met my first abuser at 17, I was a perfect fruit ripe for the picking in terms of, low emotional intelligence, low emotional self-esteem, just low self-esteem generally. He was 6 years older than me, and I quickly was, love bombed into a relationship. And then once they get you, obviously that's when they start to show the signs of, maybe everything isn't as rosy in the garden as you thought it was. And I ended up kind of dropping out of university and then moving in with him. And that's when I started to see the first sort of signs of, okay, this isn't right. There was a lot of control. There was a lot of jealousy. There was physical abuse. There was mental abuse. He would, follow me to places that I didn't even know. I ended up we'd had a row. I'd left the house and I went to see some friends. And we ended up kind of going out and coming back at, whatever time in the morning. to my friend's flat that I'd never been to before, and he was outside in his car, and I was just like, how do you know where I am? Because this was like, you know, the 90s. Nobody had a phone tracker, nobody knew where anybody was. So to this day I couldn't tell you how he found where I was. And there were many instances of that where he would just turn up, and, you know, I would be with somebody and I'd have to tell them, look, please just walk away, because I knew that he would cause trouble for them. And so I would always just kind of go off with him and like make the peace, as it were. You know, I didn't understand this wasn't normal. I was just trying to emotionally regulate him, I suppose, at that time. You know, there was a lot of shame involved in that. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my family. I didn't know what to do, but so I just stayed, and I put up with it. And, you know, I even the time when I found out he was cheating on me and I went to leave, he pulled the ignition out of my car, so I couldn't drive away. And so, yeah, it was pretty intense for sort of quite a young person to deal with. But I eventually found the courage to tell you know, my parents and my family what was going on, and then, you know, moved back in with my parents. Unfortunately, quite soon after that, my father had got a job right on the other end of the UK, so they were moving, and I had to find somewhere to live. And he still found me there and harassed me. And he really only stopped at that point because I found someone else, you know. And that's unfortunately when I fell into my second relationship, which was equally, if not more so, toxic.
You know, when you said about how your boyfriend would take the starter out of the car, my ex-husband used to pull the distributor cap off the car. Same thing, like, so that you couldn't drive the car after I got back home.
Yeah, it's all about control.
Similar. That's crazy.
Yeah, all the control that they can have.
Oh my God. Okay, so now you're getting into relationship number 2. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, so the reason I basically the first guy kind of still pestered me even after I'd split up with him, and was living in my own flat. And he only really stopped when I met someone else who is, you know, my son's father. I was at that point, because of this ex that was constantly coming around and causing problems. I was having problems with the flat I was living in anyway. The girls that you know, strangers that I was living with, and then the landlord were all on my back. So I needed somewhere to move out. So I essentially moved in with, you know, my son's father after about 3 months of knowing him, which to me, you know, now I'm like, what? Why? But that was my life. I had nowhere else to go. I was really uncomfortable in the flat. The people who I was living with were making it very uncomfortable. And he, again, was love bombing me, and everything was rosy in the Garden of Eden. I didn't think this was going to happen to me again. And as did with the first one, it was all lovely. It was, you know, it was great. And I remember we booked a holiday together. We went to Greece, I believe. And that was the first time I ever saw anything, you know, that concerned me, because, and again, when I tell you these things, I won't be able to give you any detail about what caused it, you know, what set him off on that day, or what, because I'm sure a lot of people who've had trauma, and I'm sure you can relate, you have a lot of blanks in there. You can't remember the specifics, but you can remember their bad bits. And I remember he, for whatever reason, you know, was angry, and he went out into the balcony of our apartment or whatever, and, you know, threw the table, threw the chairs, smashed the ashtray, you know, and I remember hiding in the bathroom thinking, oh my Lord, I'm here again. But we were on holiday, it was fine, we were going to have a lovely time, it's a beautiful place, Greece. And so we, you know, continued with our holiday, and it was, you know, great in a load of parts. So I had a lovely holiday. But then, you know, there was this, again, can't tell you why, he got angry with me one night. We were walking to go to dinner in the town, and there was a wall, and then there was like the pavement, and then there was a car, and he basically gripped me around both of my arms and was kind of slamming me against the wall, and then slamming me against the car, and then slamming me against the wall, and then slamming me against the car while shouting in my face. And there was a Chinese restaurant opposite, and I could see all the people in the window, like looking at me, and I'm thinking, why is nobody helping me here? But, you know, they didn't. And so we carried on. I dried my tears and we went to the bar and we had an evening. And then the next day I got up and looked at my arms, and you could literally see his fingers in bruises on both of my arms. And I was like, oh, okay, this isn't good. This is probably not ideal. But my family lived down south by this point. I was up north. You know, I didn't have anywhere else to go. No local, you know, it was literally just my mum and dad. My brothers were at university. So I had no one to say anything. And I personally, you know, in my head, justified it because, well, you think of abuse and you think, oh, well, the woman's getting punched, she's getting whatever. And in my naive young head, I believed that, you know, that wasn't abuse really. It was just him getting a bit angry, and I probably provoked him by answering back. And I think that was my thing throughout the whole of this second relationship, was that it was in my head, I was like, oh, I'm a bit too mouthy. You know, I probably shouldn't have said that back to him, sort of thing. And I'm sure a lot of women can identify, because you want to say it because you feel it's wrong in your heart. But then when you do, it ends up worse for you. So, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, a little spectrum of some of the stuff that went on. And like I say, I justified it in my head in that he wasn't punching me. I wasn't, apart from the arm bruises and stuff, I guess. But, you know, again, this is the logic in my brain. I had bruises, but I didn't think those bruises were good enough, you know? So I think that's a thing that a lot of women, they kind of try and downplay it in the language. And I realise now, even now, the language that I use to talk about it, I'm downplaying it myself, which is, you know, it's not how I want to be. And I'm trying to check myself now and actually, you know, these are difficult conversations. A lot of people find this hard to hear. And I certainly know lots of my friends who are going to potentially watch this and think, wow, we didn't know that about her. Or, you know, like, this is stuff that she's never ever said to us, because I don't talk about it in detail, because I am, in parts, at 49 years old, still ashamed of it, and that I allowed it.
No, I 100% agree with you on that. And I was exactly the same. Nobody knew what was happening to me. And a lot of people to this day, even my mother, doesn't know what happened to me, right? And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. It's almost like a Me Too movement, but with abuse, because so many of us sit on it. We, you know, have experienced it, and we internalize it. And I want to show that there's no shame in talking about it, and that we are all together. Like, there's so many of us that have been through this. We all have voices. Let's all be heard now, right? That we have, you know, that the women who are going through this now can get out of it. Yeah. You know, we need to be able to help them get out of it. But I totally relate to you on that aspect, 100%. And I'm sure the majority of the women listening to this that have experienced this are going to agree too. So, yeah.
I think it's certainly a point that we all start to, as a collective, think about questioning ourselves, though, when we are downplaying it, because that's our truth, and it's okay to speak our truth. As uncomfortable, and that's what I find. I try and downplay it because other people find it uncomfortable, but that's my truth. I didn't ask for it to be like that. It wasn't fun, but that's my truth nonetheless. You know, in terms of the relationship, same old, physical abuse, mental abuse, control, gaslighting, you know, the gaslighting was wonderful. You know, he would, I remember one time he pushed me into my back, hit the kitchen bench, quite aggressive, very aggressively. And I said, you know, why did you do that? You know, you hurt me. And he went, oh, I just pushed past you. And you're like, no, he didn't. I know he didn't, but no, I just pushed past you. It's you know, like, it's a you problem. So that was hard. And he would, you know, there would be times when he would want to have sex, and I wanted to just go to bed like normal people. And so I learned that, you know, I learned to listen to his breathing so that I knew when he was falling asleep. So obviously your breathing changes. You can hear when someone's deeply breathing when they're asleep. And I learned to go to bed with him, and then I would listen. Right, he's asleep now. Okay, now I can relax. I can go to sleep now, because otherwise, it would be like throw back the covers, start an argument, rowing, screaming, whatever. And I was just like, I've got work tomorrow. I just want to get some sleep, kind of thing. Or, you'd put out when you didn't want to put out, because that was just easier and quieter for you. But yeah, the breathing thing was a big thing for me, and still now, I'm not great with sleep. I struggle with my sleep because I'm so wound up, and this was like many years ago for me, 20 plus years ago for me. And then I got pregnant. Wasn't planned, but happy nonetheless. And I was like, right, well, because there were lots of days when I wouldn't say it was good, but it wasn't violent, it wasn't aggressive. We could just get on and make the dinner together, or I would make the dinner. But anyway, live a normal life, as it were. So I was like, right, we're having a child, this'll change things, and naively. And don't forget, still had nowhere to go at this point. So what was I going to do? And I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months pregnant with my son, and he got angry with me and put his hand on my mouth so hard that he made my mouth bleed. Because I remember I had white leggings on at the time, and the blood was going onto the leggings. I was more annoyed about ruining the leggings. And then he pushed me over the back of the sofa. And then I was like, right, this is I need to do something. So I did. I left, but the only place I had to go was his mum's house. So I stayed there for like 3-4 days, and then had no choice. Well, we're having a baby. Come on, let's make it work. And all the naivety of all of it. And so I tried to make the best of it. And then my son was born, and it was fine. He's a wonderful child. One of the biggest blessings of my life is both of my children. And he grew older, and it just didn't get any better, And the night that I decided that I was going was, he had gone out. He'd been drinking with his friends. He came back about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was in bed, and it was summer. I had nothing on. He threw back the covers, dragged me out of bed. Whatever it was, what he was shouting at me. Details are vague. And I always used, and this is the thing I said, I used the word, he tried to strangle me. He didn't try to strangle me. He strangled me. I thought I was going to die, and I was screaming. Very close houses. I was hoping the neighbours would call the police. No help was coming for me. And then he let go, and I just remember turning and seeing my son, who'd got out of his cot at like 18 months old, in the hallway, and I looked at him, and I said, "No, I can't do this. I don't want my son to think that that's okay in terms of him as a man." And how you treat women. And so I let him, finish off to him screaming, whatever. Eventually he was drunk, so he fell into bed. I think it was about 4 hours later. And then I picked my son up. I picked up a couple of nappies. I picked up a toothbrush each. And by coincidence, at the time, my brother had just rented a house with a spare room. So I finally had somewhere that I could go. And I picked him up, got in the car, and I left him. And that was. I'm proud of it to this day, because it was hard and I had to start again. But my Lord, it was the best thing I ever did. It was the best thing I ever did. It was just to say, enough is enough. My kids do not need to see this, and I don't want that future for them. And you know what? My son, my husband, again, like yours, I've been with for 22 years now. I met him just before this incident happened. He was working in a coffee shop. I was going in to get my coffees, and life has just taken over. And my husband is the best dad to my son. He's the one that gets the Father's Day cards every year. He's the one that was wiping up his sick in the middle of the night when he was a little kid, and he's at the ripe old age of 24 now. And I can tell you, if you ask him that question, he'll tell you who his real dad is. And he still has a relationship with his father. I've never stopped that. but he'll tell you who his dad is. And thank God I did that, and thank God I can now look back at the age of 49 and say I gave my kids the best chance, because I wasn't probably going to do it for myself because I didn't have enough self-esteem to go there. But to do it for my kids, I'll do anything for my kids. You ask me to jump off a cliff, yeah, sure, back on, let's go.
Did he fight you for custody or anything like that, or was it just easy going like when you left? Can you tell us a little bit about what happened when you left?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I never stopped him seeing him. We kind of negotiated, you having this weekend, I'll having that weekend. But then from the point, because he lived quite a distance, about an hour away from where I went to live. And so it was like weekends. And at first, my son was still in nursery, so we could sort of split the week. But then from the minute he started to go into full-time school, when he was like about 4 or 5, he lived with us full-time and is still to this day. I'm still trying to get him to leave. But yeah, it wasn't, I got a letter because we weren't married. I don't know how it works, obviously, in other countries, but certainly here in the UK, if the mother is given parental responsibility, they call it. And if the couple weren't married, the father can apply for parental responsibility, but he has to do that through the courts. And I got a letter, however many months after I'd left, saying I want to go to court and do this parental responsibility. And it was like something I had to do to make this happen. And I just went, screw the letter up, and I put it to the side, and never heard anything ever again. So obviously it wasn't that bothered.
And so what did you do to when you left? Did you seek support out from anywhere? Did you go to a therapist, or did you seek out any type of help to deal with the trauma that you had experienced?
I didn't seek any therapy. No, not going to lie. Thought I could just crack on with life and it wouldn't affect me. And you know what? It did. When I look back now, it did. I ended up eventually on antidepressants, which would have been as a result of stuff that was going on. But I never sought professional help until 2015, when my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And my world just fell apart, because obviously this is the man who I've loved, who I've raised this wonderful family with, and is my rock, as I am his. And so, yeah, I kind of toughed it out for about 6 months after his diagnosis, and then had a breakdown, ended up off work for 6 months. And through the charity, which is a wonderful charity here in Manchester called St Anne's Hospice, they help with all people who are going through horrible cancer journeys, but they also help their families as well, which I think is really important. And they offered me, like, they could see what a mess I was in. The woman you see here today is not who I was. I was a quivering wreck who could barely string a sentence together and was scared of anything. And through that I had some therapy, and the person I used to see said, I think you've probably got complex PTSD because of this. Which, once I Googled it, made total sense. It's like so validating, actually, to have something to pin your, oh, well, I feel like this, and oh, it's because of that. It really helped me to have that diagnosis. Although I will say it's not something I lean on today. I'm trying to kind of not be that, like, I'm not just a diagnosis. I'm trying to challenge myself. Hence the reason I'm doing this. And not have, but it was very comforting at the time, I know. And I did something called EMDR therapy, which is, it's basically like a light bar. I believe you can do it on YouTube. Somebody told me the other day. It's like a light bar when I did it, and you just follow the lights across with your eyes whilst kind of reliving some traumatic memory. And it helps to kind of get your left and right side of the brain to sort of communicate with each other, so that instead of these horrible memories and flashbacks that you have being at the forefront of your mind, so they're coming out all the time, it's like, at the end of every day, everything gets filed away in the back of your head, and that goes into the back of your head so that it's not core memory anymore. And that helped me to a degree. But I kind of struggled with it again to a degree, because the therapist that I had was a wonderful man. This was nothing against him, but he was a man. And so I kind of got to the point where there was some sort of traumatic sexual abuse memories that I didn't feel comfortable. And I sort of pulled out of that, but it did help me. And then over the years, whenever I've kind of gone through a low patch, I have, had to seek out private therapy, which is very pricey, as I'm sure it is everywhere. Because unfortunately, I'm sure everybody knows that the resources for free help in the UK, you can get it through the NHS. But they're so oversubscribed. You'd be waiting a year to see anybody, and even then it'll be a very low-level therapist. And, the stuff that they were offering wasn't something that would have kind of dealt with what I was trying to deal with. But it definitely helped me, and it's, given me so much perspective. And, I know it's there if I need it, but thank goodness I've not had an episode of being, crushed and broken for, I don't know, 10 years now, so happy days.
And so, in going back, were you employed when you were with this guy and your second guy and having the baby?
Yes, I was. So that was one of my my saving graces, as it were, was the fact that I had a job and I had a car. So, I was able to pick up and go away and not start with nothing at all, because I always made sure I worked. I always had my own income. So, it was tricky at first negotiating jobs and little babies on their own, but I made it work. And, it's definitely something that has helped me. And I want to give as much help to other people who haven't got that. That's kind of where I sit with things at the moment, is if I can help other people who haven't got that ability, because so many women have had that control taken away from them completely. They don't have a job, they don't have access to finance, they don't have access to, ways of escaping. And I'm truly grateful that I did have that option.
So when you say that you are wanting to help women with this, can you elaborate on that?
It's something that I've kind of gotten into fairly recently. I've always supported charities. I'm the first person to give to a charity if it's something that I believe in, but recently there is a charity in the UK called Refuge, and they specifically help women and children who are trying to get away from domestic violence. So they will provide them with a safe place. They will provide them with food, clothing, whatever they need, because like a lot of people, they leave with nothing. I left with nothing, but I was able to go back and get my clothes at least, or whatever. A lot of women haven't got that choice. And so in March of this year, I undertook a challenge that they had going called walk 2 miles every day in March for Refuge. So I completed that. I was very lucky. They have a Just Giving option, obviously, so that money goes directly to the charity. And I managed to raise over £1,000 for the charity in a month, which I can't believe. I've got such wonderful friends, family, colleagues, everyone who donated. I personally thank them, and it just means so much to me. And even my daughter was badgering all her teachers to donate, because she understands how important it is. And, so she wants to help. And I'm proud that I've raised a daughter. She's 15 now, who's fierce, will not take the rubbish that I took. So that's my little way of giving back. And, if I can help someone by talking about this stuff today, then goodness me, I would be so proud.
That's amazing. So if somebody listening wanted to donate to the charity, could they still do that?
Yes. So the walk's finished. I've done it. It was great, actually. It's got me walking a lot more than I usually do. Added benefit of losing a few pounds. But yes, the Just Giving page is still open, and it will be open until the end of July. And maybe we could stick a link on or something if anyone wanted to. And like I say, all goes direct to the charity. They will get every penny of it. And so I know that they would really appreciate. And the more money we get, the more women we can help to escape this.
Absolutely. And what was the name of the charity again?
It's called Refuge, Refuge.
And is it based out of Manchester?
I believe it's UK based. I don't actually think it's particularly a Mancunian thing. You'll see it you'll know it when you see it, because it's a big pink logo.
Okay, so do they have facilities all over, or do they just help
Yeah, so
women?
yeah, it's the whole of the UK that they will help. So anywhere that women need help in the UK, they'll be able to do something for them. They have helplines for people who just want to talk about it. You know, they have other ways, and like I say, crisis management, where if you need to get away, they can help you.
That's wonderful. Because I'm sure we probably have a lot of listeners that are in the UK. And that is one thing that is so important is if you are in this type of situation is to have a safety plan, right? To have a plan to, in order to, if you're thinking about leaving, but these type of places, and I know that in North America here, and I'm on Vancouver Island in Canada, and we have even a place like it's called Nanaimo Women Helping Women, and they are something similar to this where they will provide you, with a hotel room for the night, for an escape plan with, a gift card for money and some clothes for the kids. And, they are very, very helpful. So I will definitely post a link to this. And if any of our viewers would like to donate to Refuge, I think that would be fantastic. So that
Thank you.
they can, the more women we can help, the better, right? That's the gist
Oh
of this
yes.
podcast too, is to bring awareness and to help women. And also on my site, awakenofreedom.ca, there will be resources that women can go to, that are like therapists, counselors, or what have you. But they're all women. They're all women here.
Yeah, that
So
makes a difference.
I love how you said you wanted to help the sisterhood, because it absolutely is a sisterhood, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think I love the way that you equate it to a Me Too movement as well, because that this kind of platform needs to be had. These, people don't believe us. You see all this stuff about violence against women, and people go, "Oh, it's not that bad." And I know so many people that it is that bad. It is awful, and it does need to be spoken about. And if men tell us that we're exaggerating, we're not. We're here to tell our stories. And I, for one, as uncomfortable as I find this to put myself out there, and especially being filmed, I'd rather do that so that we can say, no, look, listen, these are real stories, these are real people, and this has really happened, and this is my truth. But by the flip side, say, there is hope. I've been happily married for 17 years now, as I know you have been happily married. And so there is light at the end of the tunnel. You think when you're leaving that your world is over. I remember thinking at, mid-20s that this is how my life is going to be. It's going to be just miserable, and I'm going to be at the beck of, of these horrible men for the rest of my life. And this is all I'm going to put up with. But my life isn't like that at all now. I am so happy. I have wonderful children. I have a lovely house. I have a couple of cats. My life is peaceful. And that is what leaving can give you, is peace.
Absolutely. And back to what you just said too, with the, because I was the same way. I at first it was more verbal abuse. It was psychological abuse. He wasn't hitting me at first. So I didn't think this was abuse. I thought abuse had to be just like you said, punching in the face and things like that. But what happened was I kept accepting this and thinking, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, he doesn't mean to. Oh, he's sorry, until he did start to punch and hit. Right. And a lot of times it can exaggerate into that. So recognizing the signs of abuse in early stages, I think, is the best thing you can do so that you can get your ass out of there before it
Yes.
escalates into something that you
Yeah.
have to run from, you know? And, I know I don't want this platform to be like, a men bashing, because that's not what I'm doing. It's because there are so many wonderful men out there. There really is. I mean, you and I both have one. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But
Yeah.
don't put up with the ones that are crap. That's what we
Yeah.
want to say.
Exactly. Yeah. Know how to
Right?
differentiate.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. So do you have any words of encouragement for women that are out there that may be going through this that you could inspire them with?
Oh, words of encouragement I can do. Inspiration is up to how they receive it. But
Right.
just like you said, recognize the signs. Understand it's not your fault. Understand it's their fault. And like you said, you've already said. I mean, you've already given the inspiration, but learn to recognize the signs you know, when they're early, when it's you know, something getting thrown across the room. That's how it started. You know, he would knock a lamp over, and oh gosh, and you know, and I'd be the one that would pick it up or clean it up if it broke. And it starts with that, and then it starts with a push, and then it progresses into something else, and then he's screaming in your face like this close to you, you know, and then the next thing you're listening to someone's breathing to fall asleep because you're so scared of what will happen if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I so appreciate you coming on here today and telling your story, Bridget. That was so brave of you. It really was. And we so appreciate it because so many women are going to benefit from this, from hearing your story, from hearing other stories like this. The reason I got into this was because I read a book by Dr. Stephen Hassan called Combating Cult Mind Control. And like he says in that book, it doesn't help if we stay silent. It doesn't, you know, but if we can tell our stories and get other women to hear them and get our voices heard, we can help so many.
Yeah,
And that's the goal, right?
yeah, 100.
Yeah,
Little by little, we'll crack it together. Yeah, if we all do a little bit, then it will have a big impact overall.
exactly. Yes, for sure. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to our listeners who listened to this story. Please give us a like and feel free to comment and then mingle with the comments because that helps more people see it. And I hope you will subscribe so that you can continue to hear these brave stories of these women and get it out to the women who need to hear it. So thank you so much, Bridget. You have a wonderful
Thank you
day.
for having me.